From this day forward, your life is Mondo Burger. Forget about your mothers. Forget about your fathers. Because from now on, Kurt is both your mother and your father.
Kurt must look awfully strange naked.
Who said that? Who talked while Kurt was talking?
It was him! He uttered something.
Well, I should have known. Look at you. Your black t-shirt, your hair. You think you're better than Kurt?
No, sir.
You know what happens when people mess with Kurt?
What, sir?
They go in the grinder. You want to go in the grinder, bro?
Now, is this a metaphorical grinder or is this a real grinder?
That's it. That's it. You're out of here. Adios, TKO, historical.
Whoa, no, I need this job.
Get the stoves out of my face.
I need this job. No, what are you doing, man? No.
Hey, what's up, guys? Today we're going to take a look at one of my favorite movies from the 90s, one of my favorite childhood movies, and probably one of the best Nickelodeon movies that Nickelodeon's ever produced. The 1997 film, Good Burger. Good Burger was made by Dan Schneider, and this is basically the same type of thing that Saturday Night Live did with movies like Tommy Boy, Black Sheep,
Wayne's World.
Those were all movies created based off of sketches on Saturday Night Live, whereas Good Burger, it was the same thing. Good Burger was a sketch on the Nickelodeon show All That, the very popular Nickelodeon show at the time. And the Good Burger sketches would usually revolve around Kel Mitchell, who would play Ed, this completely
Bonehead, and then he's a genius when he needs to be.
This demented moron. And Kenan usually wouldn't play himself or the character that he plays in the movie. Usually would play Lester Oak's construction worker. And the sketches were hilarious, and so obviously Nickelodeon thought that they would capitalize on the popularity of it and make a movie out of it. They were those types of movies where all the critics hated them, despised them, yet most of the viewers actually loved them because they were able to see them, not as quality pieces of film, but just as funny, entertaining movies, and that's what they are. Are they stupid? Yes. Are they terrible? Yes. But they're funny.
Yeah,
that's
they
the
are.
bottom line.
They're
They're
funny.
stupid funny. The movies that you got to turn your brain off to watch.
Right.
And as I said, this was created by Dan Schneider, who, if you're familiar with that name, or if you're familiar with Nickelodeon, you're probably familiar with the name Dan Schneider.
He makes everything.
Drake and Josh, that's my favorite show.
Pretty much 90% of all the great Nickelodeon shows over the years were either created or he had a hand in them. In creating them. Even all the bad Nickelodeon shows like iCarly and all that crap.
I mean, iCarly did the best out of all the newer ones, though.
Yeah,
I guess.
but it doesn't mean it's
that.
good.
And hold on. It showed us Jeanette McCurdy. Let's just stick with that.
Yeah, it gave us Jeanette McCurdy.
Yeah, come on, that's worth it. That's worth it.
I guess.
Do you not think she's insanely hot?
Yeah, I do now. She was a child when that.
No, she wasn't.
She was
still like 17, 18.
No, she was not.
Back around.
We're talking about Good Burger.
Like I said, it's a pretty bad movie. If you look at it.
I wouldn't pay to see it.
If you look at it through the eyes of a movie critic, you're gonna despise this movie. And if you look at it through the eyes of either
a kid
or a Nickelodeon
I'd probably find it
fan,
hilarious. I found it
exactly.
pretty funny too. I mean, I just wouldn't go to the movies to see it. I'd wait for it to come out in my opinion.
I love this movie when I was little, and I still love it to this day. I don't know if it's just because.
You watched it when you were young, and then you just kind of grew up with it?
I don't know if it was just the nostalgia of it, but for some reason, the movie still seems funny to me.
Like I said before, I caught on to things that you never would as a kid, because they definitely geared some parts towards older generations.
And Nickelodeon in general was like that back in the 90s.
Yeah.
Every show was like that. That's why, people like me, because I always understood most of those sexual innuendos and all those types of jokes. And
growing up with older brothers, that's what you get.
Yeah, exactly. And I still love them to this day. I can still go back and watch those shows and still laugh my ass off at them.
Same.
And that just shows how great those shows were and how smart they were to go that route with those shows.
And then they changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, it just got awful.
They fell off a cliff, obviously.
Yeah.
Like literally, it wasn't like a slow process. It was like good to terrible. Huh?
If Nickelodeon still had those types of shows on today, I would still watch Nickelodeon.
Same.
I watched it for a long time until SpongeBob started to get really bad. Then I was like, alright, I can't take it anymore.
That and then Fairly Odd Parents introduced Poof.
I don't think that would have killed the show if they went about it differently. They just kind of took it in the wrong direction.
After that, it just
Good Burger, back to Good Burger.
Yeah, and all the shows, even All That, which Good Burger spawned from, all that got really bad because it was just on for way too long.
Totally.
But
it's like Saturday Night Live. That got bad eventually too.
Exactly. In my opinion, Saturday Night Live is the worst show on television right now. I think it should have been canceled 10 years ago. If a kid today who was the same age that I was when I first saw this movie watched it today, I don't think they would find it funny or understand it at all.
It's iffy, 50-50 with me. I feel some would, some wouldn't. Depends.
Because things have changed so much.
Yeah, definitely.
Back then, like
totally different generation.
every kid show was like that, and it was more family.
Now they see these newer shows, and they're just a lot better quality, like picture-wise, and they'll just look at the actual picture itself and then just realize this is something old. It's not that funny.
I still love this movie. I still find it hilarious. So I think for the credits, for the people who made it, I think I'm gonna give it a B.
I think that's a pretty fair rating.
Yeah.
I like that rating, so I'm going to go ahead and agree with it. It's the best B I've ever drawn, man.
Very bold.
Yeah.
I'll go almost the same. I'll give it a B minus.
So as far as the characters for this movie, as I said, this movie stars Kenan Thompson and Kel Mitchell, who at the time this movie came out, they were reaching their popularity, the peak of their popularity.
And then they disappeared.
Yeah, eventually they just vanished off the face of the earth, except for Kenan. These guys were just so funny, and they really struck gold, in my opinion, with these two guys, And I think they saw it,
I can see that.
On All That, these two were the funniest, in my opinion.
Oh yeah, they didn't really get. There was a few funny moments with other people, but I don't think anyone else really mattered.
They just somehow had such good chemistry with each other.
Yeah.
And it's tend to think that they're not even good friends at all.
Yeah,
that just surprises me.
Not a lot of people know that they came from completely different parts of the country, and they never really hung out at all, especially...
So let's make a movie with it.
Especially during their time doing Kenan and Kel, which was a genius idea in my opinion, because I go back and watch that show now, Kenan and Kel, I think it's one of the top sitcoms in the 90s. It's really well done. If you go back, it's just as funny as shows as, like, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and Boy Meets World and all the shows that I loved as a kid. I go back and watch that. It's still hilarious.
Yeah.
Mainly because those guys have such great chemistry and they're so damn funny. Even though some of the dialogue in this movie is really cheesy, overall.
It's just kind of Nickelodeon in definition right there.
They're very Nickelodeon type characters. They're not very in depth. There are a lot of holes with their characters. You don't really get to know these characters that well. Especially like Ed. Even as a kid, I always wondered like, where the hell are Ed's parents? Like, there's no way this kid actually has parents. The way he lives and everything, you can't picture this guy.
I love his introduction, though. He wakes up in his uniform, and he takes a shower in his uniform, and he roller skates to work.
It's hilarious. Like, this guy in real life would be in a mental institution. Kenan is Kenan, He plays pretty much himself, the same role that he plays on, like, Kenan and Kel and things and shows like that, which was a smart move,
He's a mature, selfish kid,
He's best when he's just himself. He's funnier to me. And, overall, even though the characters were very kind of flat and they didn't really go into too much detail about any of them, I still think most of them were pretty funny. I think overall for the characters, I'm going to give a C+ for the characters. Just above average a little bit.
I partially agree with that statement. I think there were a lot of holes with the characters, but I'm going to give around the same grade. I'm going to just go with a normal C.
There's not much more I could say other than the two main characters were funny, but they didn't really go into in depth with any of them. But I don't think they really needed to.
Yeah, I mean it is a kids movie.
Yeah, it's a kids movie. No kid is gonna look toward like all this stuff.
They go in a little bit with like Kenan's character Dexter and how his father left
they
him.
had some serious moments.
Yeah, and like one or two.
And then Kel
heart-to-heart
comes with
moments.
the yo-yo.
Even though in this movie, like it's really hard to think that would go there. But for me, I'll give my rating. I'll agree with Stimpy, and I'll give it a C.
As far as the plot for this movie, the plot is pretty simple. It's it's pretty much the only plot that you can really expect from a movie about an all that sketch. It's pretty much Good Burger is this really low rent kind of rinky-dink burger shop, and they have this new burger joint across the street called Mondo Burger opening, and it's huge competition, and this guy Kurt Boswell is this big rich little young punk, and
it's like a rock concert at the opening of
yeah,
it's so
somehow
funny.
manages to gather these thousands of people to this grand opening of Mondo Burger,
the fast food place. That was probably one of the funniest parts of the movie. Just like all this
how
this burger joint.
Nobody does that for a fast food restaurant except for Five Guys, maybe.
Absolutely. Basically, the plot of this movie is that Mondo Burger and Good Burger they hate each other, and Kurt Boswell, the owner of Mondo Burger, spends most of the movie just trying to put Good Burger out of business. He assumes that Mondo Burger is just going to crush them right away, but Good Burger eventually gets really lucky, and they discover that Ed, played by Kel Mitchell, has this magical sauce, this incredible sauce that he puts on
and
his
I'm
food.
kind of afraid of it. I'm a chef, so I'm like...
it looked delicious, to be honest with you.
Ugh.
Mainly because it was orange. And
What?
I always pictured it being...
I don't like condiments at all, so...
I always pictured it being like French dressing.
It just looked really...
Honestly, it's probably what they used in the movie.
It looked really gross to me, yeah.
I always thought it looked delicious. It always made me want to know.
It just reminded me of like the Nickelodeon slime.
Yeah,
so I was just kind of like, not on my burger.
One thing I wanted to point out about this movie that I loved was the cameo from Sinbad. Sinbad, in my opinion, is an extremely underrated comedian, especially during the 90s. He had a few roles here and there. He had a few movies, but for the most part, he just kind of like came and went. Nobody really paid that much attention to him. But he has a really funny part in this movie, I think. As playing this ridiculous teacher, this over-the-top teacher of Kenan's.
And his stuff just gets destroyed over and over again. It's pretty funny. He puts the new one up and then...
He dresses in this ridiculous outfit.
Like a 70s typical jive black guy type
70 look in the 90s. Don't forget Shaq. He's in this movie too.
That's true. Shaq has a cameo in this movie
as
well.
It's so funny.
Which I thought was awesome.
They run up and give him a big hug.
He's just his
that would have been my reaction.
His own goofy self.
You can just tell by looking at Shaq that he's a good, probably a good guy, and he's a good sport. He has no problem doing this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
The point of this movie is the laughs, and I think you have enough laughs in this movie. So for me, overall the plot, not spectacular, but I think I'm going to give it a B-. A lot of holes in it, as there are with the characters, but the movie's funny. That's the bottom line, in my opinion. It's funny.
I agree for the most part. I thought for a kids movie it had a pretty solid plot. You don't really see too many kids movies with amazing plots,
Yeah,
but I thought this one, thought it was decent. I didn't think it was anything spectacular, like he said. But I'm gonna go ahead. I'll stick with a C+.
Oh, for this one I agree with Stimpy pretty much. I was free to my mind now. I was gonna go with a C+ because you don't expect too much from a kids movie. I mean. It was a bunch of laughs. So
I think you had more really good kids movies in the 90s than any other period, in my opinion. Anyway.
I agree with that.
Iffy.
There were a lot of ones that were bad as a kid that were good when we were kids, but when we watch them now, they're terrible. But
there's certain ones that'll always wrap you in.
Yeah, and it always frustrated me that there weren't more live-action kids movies. Like, there are hardly any these days.
Yeah.
Especially from, like, Nickelodeon.
Now it's all a lot of animation.
Oh, it's pretty much all animation.
Yeah, it's like Disney animation. That's about it.
So as far as the ending of this movie, the ending is pretty, it's over the top, it's cheesy, it's ridiculous, it's unrealistic, but...
I mean, hey, someone could tackle an old lady.
Yeah, I'm sure it's happened before, or punched her in the face, on the sidewalk of New York City or something like that.
There you go.
But that's a story for another time. They realize that Mondo Burger is putting this chemical, what was the chemical called?
I have no idea.
Triamphothol.
Triamphothol. They're putting...
Kudos for you for remembering that.
They're putting this in the meat supply to make the burgers bigger, even though they know that it's going to make the customer sick, which is one of the holes in this movie. It's like...
You can't, you need to have this place inspected and all this stuff first.
And he literally says, Kurt says, he doesn't care that people are going to get sick, and obviously...
And then he has connections with an insane asylum and just sends them to this
asylum. Obviously, if people get sick from this food, it's going to end up being traced back to this burger joint, and they're all going to end up in prison anyway.
So, yeah.
But pretty much the end is that Kenan and Kel, they expose Mondo Burger, and basically the place goes nuts because Ed accidentally drops this bottle of this triamethol in the meat supply, and it makes gigantic.
Just makes an earthquake in the building.
And then in his genius moments, he apparently realized that he would get caught anyway with it, so he just dumps all of it in, and everything just goes crazy after that.
Yeah, he figures instead of actually taking this,
his IQ rises like 200 points for a 2-minute conversation there, and goes back down.
Figures instead of taking the evidence to the cops, he'll just put this stuff in the meat supply and just let them get caught themselves. And of course, at the end of the film, all the people from Mondo Burger go to prison, and all the customers flee, and of course Sinbad gets screwed over with his car once again, and a giant burger falls on top of it. And we leave Sinbad, offering some of the money that Kenan had to pay him back. He's like, give me some money, it's time to get the burger off, man, come on. And so he's pretty much screwed. And it's funny as hell.
Yeah, I thought that was very funny.
The way Sinbad acts reminds me a lot of like how Will Smith acted in The Fresh Prince. It's this over-the-top kind of cliche kind of
I could see that.
black guy,
Yeah.
And it was always really funny to me. But yeah, I think overall, the movie's funny. It's funny, especially if you're a kid in the 90s, it was funny.
Probably laugh the whole time if you're a kid.
Exactly. If I had kids today and I showed them to this, they probably wouldn't understand it, and they probably wouldn't like it as much as I did or as I still do now. But I still enjoy it thoroughly. It's still a fun movie to pop in and watch, especially during 90s week. But I think overall, for the ending and my final thoughts on this film, my final rating, I'm going to give the movie overall a B. Just a solid B.
I'm going to give it something close to that. It's not going to be exactly the same rating, but just because this isn't... I loved this movie as a kid, but at the same time, it wasn't one of my favorites as a kid. So for my impression, I'll give it... Oh God, that's awful. Here we go, C+.
It's a 3D C.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I for one think the ending was the best part in this movie. I thought it started as it began. Welcome to Good Burger, home of the Good Burger. May I take your order? And then I thought that was like the perfect way to end that kind of movie for me.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So for me, it brought it back up a little bit, and I will give it a solid B for my rating.
Finally agree on something. It's about time.
I do agree on that.
So leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of this movie. What did you think of Nickelodeon in the 90s? Were you fans of it?
Do you think it's better now, or do you think it was better then?
Now, what was your favorite cartoon?
That's right. You better not think it's better now. You better not think it's better now.
Something's wrong with you.
I just want to see your opinion.
I'll find you and just throw a brick at your head.
Like this video, please subscribe. Subscribe to my good buddies, Simply Stimpy and King Darenitis. Awesome channels, kick-ass channels. If you like this review, please subscribe for more. Hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you
next time.
Next time.